Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 74 with Paul Baker. We have a really good chance, Jeff and I do today, to sit down and talk shop with, in my opinion, one of the top jazz writers in the country. And we're going to listen to a lot of his music and talk a lot about jazz education, I believe. Also, just wanted to point out, if people are new to the podcast, two things. If you enjoy the jazz education hang, we do have probably 10 or 12 episodes already that we've done in the field of jazz education. So I urge you to go back and check some of those out. Also, if you can think of maybe a band director friend of yours who would enjoy listening to the podcast, I would urge you to think of that person right now and potentially put this on pause and let them know, if you like this podcast, that they should check it out. We would appreciate that very much, wouldn't we, Jeff?
Yes, we would. It would be fantastic.
Paul, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Great. Well, I actually, can we start with just a little bit of your background story and your company and how you started it and all that?
Sure. Well, background story. I started writing when I was 16 in high school. I was a senior, and the jazz band director, a very talented arranger and drummer named John Eplin, now long since retired. But he, one day, I guess one of the first couple of days of rehearsal, he was saying, okay, who wants to learn how to play solos? Who wants to do this? Who wants to do that? And then he said, okay, who's going to write charts for the band? And I swear to God, I did not consciously move an inch, but I looked over to my right, and somehow my hand was up by my ear. And before I literally grabbed it and tried to put it back down. And by the time I could get there, he said, oh, Paul's going to write charts. And so I went, okay, I guess I have to write a chart for the band. I had no idea. I have been playing in school band since third grade. So I wasn't unfamiliar, but it was my very first time in jazz band. I hadn't heard a lot, but I just kind of went home, and I'd always played kind of hobbyist piano, just kind of picking stuff out. And my father was a hobbyist pianist as well, who was a huge Brubeck fan. And so I had kind of an ear going already. And so I had come across a lead sheet on "What Are You Doing the Rest of Your Life?" And so I wrote that up. We had an all-state trombone player, so I wrote that up as a trombone feature for him. And that was my very first chart. And from there, I just said, oh, okay, that went okay. Let's try something else. And so I wrote 2 or 3 charts that year. And that's kind of where it all began. And then just kept writing all through my years at North Texas. I was also very fortunate growing up in Dallas at that time. There was a very good rehearsal band at the time called the Dallas Jazz Orchestra, and had a lot of the best players in town. And my dad, being a jazz fan, we would go down to rehearsals and stuff, and they started doing weekly gigs, and we would start going down to those on Sunday afternoons, Sunday evenings. And once I had gotten to North Texas, and I was, young and headstrong, 18-year-old kid who obviously knew it all, had business cards printed up and the whole thing. And I somehow had the gumption to walk up to the baritone sax player and said, hi, I'm Paul, and I'm in North Texas, and here's my card if you ever need a sub. And he called me the very next Sunday, and I was in the band for the next 4 or 5 years. And they were very, very supportive and willing to read whatever I brought in, and played and actually recorded probably 3 or 4 of those charts at that point in time. And Galen Jeter, who was the leader of the band, had a publishing company, Dallas Jazz Publishing, and that actually was my first entry into being published as a composer. And then from there out to Los Angeles for 6 years in the mid to late 80s. And then did a master's degree. Well, it was a 1-year graduate program at the University of Southern California in film scoring, and came into contact with lots of great writers and great players out there. Studied briefly with Patrick Williams, the film composer,
Yep.
and played in Tom Kubis's big band. I'm sure you're familiar with Tom and all his huge library of music and such. And Gordon Goodwin, met Gordon, spent some time with him. Just lots, everybody out there writes. It's a little scary. Everybody is an amazing player and great writer. So I was kind of immersed in that whole West Coast, Southern California sound of big band writing. And then by 1990, we had two small kids who were school age, and we said, no, we don't want to raise them in Hollywood. And so then we moved back down to Texas here. We've been here in Austin ever since. And so I've been writing down here for local groups and such. And then as the gigs kind of started to dwindle, and I was becoming less and less enamored of, playing in blues bars until 2:00 in the morning, or, traveling, on the road, that kind of stuff. It's like, I got to find something else to do that really, that'll kind of replace that money and still allow this. And I've always liked writing. And, they have this Sibelius software now and this thing called the internet. And I could probably put something together like that. And so that's kind of how it all started in 2006. The first show we went to was 2007, February, the Texas Music Educators. It was the first time we ever said, "Hi, world, we're here" in public. And it's just kind of grown from there ever since.
So if people don't know, I asked Paul a little while ago when we were planning this episode if he would send me the list of his favorite 10 charts, or 10 charts that he wanted people to be able to hear. And I thought if we find a way through this episode to play maybe 2 or 3 at a time, interspersed with our talking, that might be great for people, because we're all about, on this podcast, like really making it practical for the people who are listening to help their bands get better. So Paul, can we listen to maybe 2 charts right now and talk about each one, and then we'll keep going with more information.
Absolutely.
There's a couple. I want to throw out a chart that is not on your list, but I really enjoy. If people if they have a younger band, something in the grade 2 level, there's a chart that Paul wrote called Front Row Seats. It's based on the tune Doxy, correct?
Yes.
It's just a great swinger that I really enjoy. So that's not one of the ones that we're going to listen to, but that's one people should check out. First, let's listen to Mudbug Strut, if you don't mind, probably because I'm biased, because it is one of my favorite charts ever written. It's a contrafact on When the Saints Go Marching In. What do you think are some of the reasons people should play this chart educationally?
Educationally? Well, the whole New Orleans tradition of Dixieland, that's where this whole music started.
Yep.
And what I should say really coalesced originally was in New Orleans. So that tradition, that history, that really needs to be carried on, particularly in this day where information is so available. Every style is available everywhere. I think the historical context, that the sequence of events gets lost unless you really study it. If somebody says, "Oh, here's this New Orleans music," or "Here's this 1980s Electric Miles music," or "Here's Steps Ahead," or "Here's Chris Potter," or "Here's Snarky Puppy," nobody really has the awareness yet of understanding, okay, well, this is because of that, this is because of that, that kind of thing. So I think historically it's very important to have that.
And to find, a really great New Orleans jazz chart that kids love to play and is playable is really, really valuable. I'll say this, I'm probably not the only band director who's done this. Before COVID, one of my bands was playing this chart, and I had a girl who really wanted a solo. She was a piano player, but wasn't comfortable improvising, but she was a great singer. So I just suggested she just sing the head of When the Saints Go Marching In during her solo section. And because of that, a couple of the judges realized that it was based on that tune. And of course, that allowed me some teaching along the way as well.
That's a great idea. I'm always all for that. I look at my scores not as, final documents. My scores are blueprints, basically. So this is the idea. This is the blueprint. This is the boards where they go. This is the foundation you need. All that kind of stuff. But what you ultimately build with it is up to the director and the students and what their abilities are. If we talk about arm strength a little later on,
Yep.
there's a portion in the shout section where one director said, "Yeah, this sounds a lot like a swing section," and they actually went to a walking baseline and did 16 bars of swing in the middle of this funk chart before it went back to the thing. I was like, that's a great idea. I wish I'd thought of that, or I wish I'd had the courage to do that, to just, put it in there officially on paper.
All right. Well, that's going to be the second chart. So let's listen.
Great.
Let's listen to Mudbug Strut. Check it out, everybody. I really like that chart. That's really
Thank
good.
you.
That's really good.
It's just a lot of fun. I mean, you can't not have fun playing that
I
chart.
can't. So I love the fact that there's the sousaphone part, which I used when I did it. Also clarinet, but both the sousaphone and the clarinet, you can do it without those charts, right? Even though it's not as authentic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You need a good drummer.
You need a good drummer, but also like nothing says New Orleans street band like a sousaphone and a clarinet. I mean, if you're going to go to New Orleans, you might as well go all the way.
My sousaphone player won an award at that festival for that bass line solo. Yeah. We did it with bass.
Yeah, this chart I've had at least two schools that I know of have incorporated it into their marching band halftime show or contest show.
Wow.
Just and particularly because of that tuba solo.
Mm-hmm.
They get their whole line of sousaphones out front, doing the whole thing. It's quite something to watch.
That's cool.
It also leads really nicely into a study of during catching, so they can see what the New Orleans clarinet player sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the tailgating trombone stuff, it's all in there.
I tried to get as many. That's one thing I learned in my graduate work is in film scoring, is it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact thing, but you have to have enough of those identifiers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go, oh, that's this, or oh, that's that? Even if it's not exactly what it is, it's enough to make you think that way.
And to me, that chart can be played by a good middle school band. I mean, a lot of middle school bands can't play it, but a good middle school band, and could be put very easily, even though you call it a grade 2. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great on an all-state program, right? I'm sure all states have done that.
Yeah.
To me, it's not a grade 2, like, oh, that's like a middle school chart. It's just a great chart. I love it. Thank you for writing it. Yeah. So
Thank-
next we're going to listen to Orange Drink, which is Orange Drink with an Attitude. Terry
Correct.
White, who, as I said earlier, says hi. I learned of this chart through him. He uses that at an All-State Jazz Festival. Can you give us
Wonderful.
30 seconds on Orange Drink? What do you think
Give me a
about it?
second, Orange Drink. It's just as much fun as you can have in a funk groove. I was banging around one day and came across that opening keyboard lick and went, "Ooh, that's something." And then it kind of went from there. My writing style tends to be I start at the left hand and go to the right.
Huh.
I don't necessarily have a tune, then say, well, gee, how should I arrange this tune? And then I should add an intro. Everything about my philosophy is it has to flow from one thing into the next.
Yep.
So again, with Orange Drink, you think of the style, you think of the hallmarks, what are the funky things, Little Tower Power, Little Brecker Brothers, that kind of a thing. And then more of a hip hop swing 16ths kind of a beat to it, and put it all together and hope it works.
All right, let's check it out. Here's Orange Drink. Such a great chart. I love that. I don't have it in front of me. Is it a one chord change solo section, or is there more than that? I don't remember.
There's more. The first A section is all one chord. Then it goes into the 4 chord.
Yeah, I love that chart.
It's all pretty diatonic. So yeah, there's nothing too out there.
So before we listen to the next chart, I want to know a little bit more about your company. I get excited when I talk to people who are musicians who then are also entrepreneurs and start their own company. So having your own publishing business, and you have some other writers who write under your business and all that. So I'm curious about all that.
It's really, I kind of hate to pull the curtain back on it because we try and, we're trying to compete with Alfred and Hal Leonard and Schoss and all the big dogs out there. And in reality, it's the company effectively is my wife and myself. Mm-hmm. And then we have some writers who contribute, and they kind of come and go over time as they get busier in their own careers or whatever. Like recently, we had a composer, Matt Morey, who contributed really, really good charts. He writes very, very well for grade 1, grade 2. He's a band director and a new parent of twin boys. So he doesn't quite have the time anymore
Yep.
to be
Yep.
writing charts. Other local Austin, it's been mainly so far, local Austin writers who have been able to contribute.
If there are people listening who are writers, is there a process for them to send stuff to you to possibly take it?
Yeah, just contact me by email. It's paul@bakersjazzandmore.com. The one caveat that I have to put out there for every submission is that I'm not looking for charts that work. I'm looking for highly successful charts that are going to get the band director's attention and go, I want to buy that.
Yep,
So basically, I'm looking for hit charts.
as you should.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of judging at jazz festivals and contests, that kind of stuff. And at least in Texas, there's no prescribed list of charts. So it's just whatever the directors want to bring and prepare. And it's just amazing. There's a lot of charts that work. There are some charts that are successful. But there are very few charts that you go, wow, that's a really, really strong piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I'm looking for overall, is it's a really strong piece of music. Is it something I'm going to want to sit there and listen to? Is it something that the band director is going to go, yeah, I want to spend money on that. That's going to make my band sound really good.
Yeah, and something that has some educational depth to it as well. Something that you can teach history and things like that. Jeff, go ahead.
As a person who judges jazz festivals, Orange Drank, I got to tell you, that would be refreshing to hear where I judge, because it catches your ear. It has a Gordon Goodwin-esque type feel to it. It grabs you, and I think from a student standpoint, it would grab the students as well.
Yeah.
I love the first piece as well, but that one just grabbed me real fast. I'd say if I were judging, I'd sit back and say, well, I got to see where they're going to take this.
Yeah.
Yep.
It just immediately grabs me. Really well written. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was down in South Texas a couple of years ago, obviously, pre-COVID, as a kind of a guest artist down there, where they were playing a concert of my music with their professional rehearsal band. And Orange Drank was on the program as the finale. And everybody down there in the audience, every student, every director, everybody, they'd all played it. They all knew it. And they all, when I went to up to the mic to announce it, okay, well, now we're going to play. It's like, they've been waiting, and they were polite and sat through the rest of the concert just so they could hear Orange Drank at the end, which completely took me by surprise. I had no idea. But apparently down there, yeah, that was the chart. Every kid loves it. I've never seen anybody who didn't enjoy it. And I just wrote it. Pardon?
What year did you write it?
2012, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Now, I've been very fortunate with that chart. When Jen was in Dallas the first time, the Jazz Education Network was in Dallas for the convention, I guess, 8 years ago, something like that. A local Texas band was playing it at a performance, and then they were being cliniced by Dr. Ronald Carter. If you're familiar with him, he's a very popular clinician. And so he was working with them, and he had never heard the chart before. So he just walks in the room and says, okay, what do you guys want to work on? And they say, we want to do Orange Drank. Okay, great. And so he starts working with them on Orange Drank. And as soon as he finished the clinic with them, he came right up to me and says, if you give me that chart, I'll take it everywhere I go. And so he's been hugely instrumental, if you pardon, no pun intended, but instrumental in broadcasting that chart, because he does all state bands, clinicians, literally all over the country all the time. And so I was very, very fortunate to have him as a kind of a bell cow out there, really, making noise for me.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, let's move on to our next two charts. The next chart is a tune called Basie's Beat. This is a straight ahead swinger, which we have not talked about this, Paul, but I assume is written in the style of Count Basie.
That was the idea.
Yeah. So let's listen to Basie's Beat. love it when it ends with the Count Basie quote. That's so great.
There's sometimes you just can't avoid it. It's got to be there.
Yeah, and I'll tell people, we could have different opinions. What is that classified for you as grade level?
2.
2. Yeah, you call it a 2. Where I live, I'd call it a 3. Other people would disagree. But I think people get too into the grade level. I think they need to listen to the music, see the score. Your site is great for having scores available to see, and then determine it based on the humans who are actually going to play the chart.
That's really what it comes down to anyway, I think. Yeah. Again, getting back, what kind of charts? The chart has to be enough to catch the director's ear. And you go, yeah, I want to do that. I want to spend my time and effort on that, and then see where it falls.
Yeah, and the chart is simple enough that you can really get them to sound like a pro band. Like, I think there's so many times when people play charts that are just hard enough that they really never get to achieve excellence.
Yeah. Or they go the opposite direction and they play stuff that, oh, we can read that down, we're good. And they're never challenged to really move beyond easy. And the 2 words I hate most next to each other: educational music. There is no such thing as educational music. I'm sorry. If it's educational, it's rarely music. Music can be educational. If it's educational, it's rarely music, in my experience at least. But I'm not that well versed, so I could be wrong about that.
No, I think you're right. I think the neat thing about the piece is that you can, as a director, teach it. Kids can perform it, have a great time with it. And you go back and talk to them about Basie style and how all this is integrated into it. And then play a Basie piece and say, and they can draw correlations between the two and say, yeah, wow. And maybe we'll get them more interested in listening to other Basie charts too along the way.
Oh yeah, exactly. The album Basie Straight Ahead was huge for me in terms of an influence, and of course that's the one that Nestica wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of my music for this situation is patterned along what would Sammy do? Should be the sign on the wall. What would Sammy do here?
Okay, so the next chart we're going to listen to is Paul Baker's Foundation Issues, and as you can imagine from the title, this features the low end of your band. So this is a little bit more on the specialty range, because a lot of bands, their lowest, the bass trombone, the bari sax are not always their strongest members. So what's the backstory behind this?
I was approached for a commission to do something to feature the bass player. And the guy said, well, we've got a really strong acoustic bass player, not just electric, but actually a real upright acoustic bass. Mm-hmm. And we would really like to have something for them to play. And I said, well, that's a great idea. I'd love to do something like that. It's unfortunately, it's all too rare in school situations to find acoustic basses. So often it's electric. So I figured, well, sure, let's go ahead and do this and have some fun with it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what came out.
Yeah, the charts that come up to mind that feature bass, obviously you have the So What stuff.
Right.
And then the Mingus, a lot of the Mingus stuff features bass.
Right.
But what about past that? Are there other things that come to mind that feature bass? Maybe you can think on it, and we'll listen to the chart. Then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'll have to.
How about that?
Got to cogitate some.
All right. Here's Foundation Issues. All right, some things I wrote down about that chart. I love the sound of the bass with the Harmon mute. That's such a
Yeah.
cool. That's such a cool sound. And that's soprano lead on that, right?
Yes, sir. Huh?
Yep. The soli with trombones. That's so cool. Is there Barry in there as well? I'm not looking at the score.
No,
No.
that's just, yeah, bass and trombone section.
So cool. And then a couple themes that were thrown in there. I like the Sakawo theme and the theme, right? The Miles Davis, the theme. And are there other quotes in there that maybe I missed? I don't know, but
Not that I'm calling to mind off to within a certain degree. I mean, it's blues, and in certain types of blues, a lot of those things are going to kind of fall in there.
sure.
And sometimes things just kind of pop out of your head. You don't realize you're doing it until you, oops, oh, that's what that is. Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. So I had a question. You know, you have a lot of tunes that are contrafacts that are based on chord changes to other tunes, and obviously that's a long-standing tradition in music, right? That's been happening for many, many, many years.
Right.
So, you know, I'm a big proponent of people playing standard tunes, original tunes, so they're learning history. And I think your charts fit under that, even though you're writing original tunes, you're still listening to the history of these other tunes.
Yeah, exactly. So much of the language, the central part of the grammar and the language vocabulary, is I guess what I'm looking for, was developed so many years ago and needs to be kept and taught. And it's not all just modal this and, you know, altered tritone clusters and all that kind of stuff. You got to have, what's a 2-5-1? Well, this is where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, gee, your stuff sounds great. Well, yeah, because it has tried and true chord progressions in it. You know, it's just fundamental building blocks that there are ways to build these things. And so taking on the vocabulary that was established in the Great American Songbook and the Gershwin and Cole Porter and everybody since then, it just makes sense to maintain that. And then you got to write your own melody on top so you don't get sued. You know.
There's a couple of charts I wrote down that are not on our list that we're not going to listen to that I listened to just in the last few days and I really liked. By George, which is based on that's like a slower, because so many rhythm changes tunes are faster.
Right.
Yeah, I like that tune a lot. And is that a grade 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
As is hopscotch.
Hopscotch.
Yeah. It's another grade 2 rhythm changes, but again, it's about here. So tempo's about here. So again, it's, you know, very, very accessible.
That's great. And then it's actually an arrangement of "Oh Lady Be Good."
Yes. Yeah, that became PD 2 years ago, I guess it was. And so they would jump on that and you know, see if I can make a nickel off good old George there.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wrote down "Say What," which is like a bassy, seems to me like a Nesticos type swinger.
Yeah, all my grade 2 swing charts for the most part, for the most part, most of my grade 2 charts are Nestico based. I mean, because he's the gold standard.
Right. And if people wanted to go and listen to more of your grade 2 stuff on your website, do you have it like kind of all the stuff in the grade 2 area?
Yeah, on the website, you can search by composer, by grade, by style,
Yep.
all that. So it's a multi-factor search. So you can go grade 2 swing and it'll then sort all those out for you.
So the people that hear something like foundation issues and they're like, that's really cool, but my band can't play it. Check out some of the grade 2 stuff. There's a lot of easier stuff in there.
Exactly. Also, the YouTube channel, Baker's Jazz and More,
Yep.
has playlists by style. So you can go to the YouTube channel and say grade 2 swing, and it'll pull up all those as well.
Isn't it funny how important all that stuff is to the amount of selling, the amount something sells? Like the amount of, I've checked out composers and you click on the link and it doesn't work. And then, you know what I mean? You can get turned off really easily, but when you have the score and sound and it's easy to use, it's just amazing.
It's been a huge advance for us. Yeah. The website actually gets very, very little traffic that I'm aware of. We get, zillions of bots, web
Yeah.
crawlers and stuff, but the YouTube channel has been very, very effective for us.
Yeah. All right. So the next chart I want to listen to, I cannot pronounce. Is it Zelha?
Shelha.
Shelha. Okay. So
Yeah.
I've listened to it. Tell us about that chart.
Shelha is a town in Mexico. I should preface all this by saying it is composed by a local Austin musician named Robert Skiles, who has a band called Beto and the Fairlanes, which is a 4-horn jazz salsa band here in Austin. It's been around for 40 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
The fun twist on it is that Robert was a jazz student at North Texas back in the 60s. So it's salsa with 2/5 jazz influences along the way.
Cool.
And I was very, very fortunate when I first began the company to be able to license a lot of his music and do as a legally derivative work in terms of copyright. So I was able to have a lot of material early to have a substantial catalog to start off with, and so, gee, here's my 3 charts, please
Mhm.
buy.
Mhm.
Well, if he only has 3, it can't be that good. I'm not going to go near it. So we would first start off, we had 20 some odd charts in the catalog already, and a large chunk of it were Robert's. So that's where this came from.
Yeah.
He's luckily, I said, being from North Texas, he thinks in terms of 4 horns, but I think he's actually hearing a big band. So it really does lend itself well to blowing out to a full big band.
All right. Well, let's listen to it. Here's Shelha. So, Paul, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm working on a salsa chart with my band right now called Ojitos by Michelle Fernandez. And she came and did a clinics with us, and she's like all about the super authentic salsa writing and all that. That one is written with just drum set. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Although you could add these congas, shakers, all the stuff.
Yep. So you could add all the different salsa stuff to it, and it would still work.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It would enhance it actually.
Yeah. It's super cool. See, that's one you could do, but if you didn't have all the percussionists, so you just had the one drum set there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's fun being here in Central and South Texas. We hear a lot of the bands that are more Latino oriented, and you'll have a jazz band that's got 6 percussionists, and man, they sound good.
Yeah.
I love that music.
All right, the next chart we're going to listen to is called Keystone Cups. So if you have a trumpet section, and this is would you call this a grade 4?
It's actually a 3, I
3?
think.
Okay.
It's listed as a 3.
Okay.
Again, it's just rhythm changes, and it's kind of a takeoff on Keystone Cops. So they all have cup mutes, so therefore it's Keystone Cups.
Right. So it's if you have a trumpet section you want to feature, and it's an up tempo swinger.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's check it out. Great chart. It's so
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, it's cool. Really.
Yeah,
nice.
I use that often for like all region jazz bands, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Gives a lot of kids a chance to play. You can open it up for as many students as want to play that are able, at that level. And the ensemble parts are not difficult for everybody. The trumpet players, obviously, have the line. But other than that, it's very accessible, I think.
So am I the only one that listens to the middle of that trombone thing and thinks hunting wabbits?
I go back several generations before that, back to Thad Jones back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay. All right.
So-
Well, I'm glad I'm learning today. This is great.
Yeah, this Thad is a very, very large influence, I think, on my writing as well. After Nestico and the whole Kenton roster of writers,
Yep.
then I think Thad has a large place in the group there.
So you've mentioned a number of writers that I think a lot of people would know. Just off the top of my head, I have this question for you. I don't know if you're prepared to answer it or not, but if you had to throw out some other names of writers, I know this one is obviously this episode is devoted to your music, but some other writers that pop up to your head that people should know about
Besides me?
besides you.
Oh God. And there's in terms of school level music you're talking about, or
Yeah.
in school level music. Well, I mean, Chris Berg does great stuff. There's so much good stuff out there. Mike Tomorrow does great stuff.
I'm going to throw out a couple names.
Yeah.
Craig Skeffington, my high school band director.
Oh yeah.
Terry
course.
White, Terry White,
Yeah.
great writer, and then someone we're going to have on the show in a month or so, Mike Kimoff.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Jeff, what about you?
Neil Slater, Jason Goldman, Horace Silver. Some of those are too old for you, Kyle, but that's okay.
That's great. I love the old music. I love it.
I mean,
Love it.
you have Thad, Bob Brookmeyer,
Mhm.
Jim McNeely is one of my current favorites.
Who lives in Maine with me?
Yeah. And you don't know? Come on. You got to catch up now. I don't know that he has written a thing that any high school band could play, but
Yep.
he is definitely on my Mount Rushmore of guys right now.
All right,
Yeah, there's a group of bands that live by playing his charts down in Connecticut, high school bands.
Really?
Yeah, they eat and breathe McNeely.
Yeah, that they're very, very lucky. Very, very lucky. I was fortunate to be in a house band at the recent International Society of Jazz Arrangers and Composers convention, which is in Austin last summer. And to be in the house band and spend several days working with Jim and playing a concert of his music. And I mean, it's just a tremendous experience. I mean, fantastic music. Everything is new. Everything is fresh, but it's in the tradition. But you just would never say, man, that's a great idea. Why did I think of that?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go home and steal a lot of stuff.
In the 70s and the 80s, everybody was trying to get anything that Thad and Mel had put out so that they could play it all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Terry Street, all those guys, everybody wanted to play their charts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's scoot on to our next one. Our next chart is going to be called Los Vientos de Cambio, which my 8th grade Spanish is coming back to me. The winds of change, I believe.
Correct,
That
yes.
means. So what's the story behind this one?
It's based on the chord change, again, based on the chord changes of There'll Never Be Another You.
Mm-hmm.
And this came about from a meeting I had at the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic, where we exhibit every year. And a band director came up and said, he just heard another band play this fantastic chart arrangement of Never Be Another You, but it was very dramatic, very theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
Had a brass choir, had a rhythm section only, had all the kind of thing. And so I said, well, I don't have anything, but I love the tune and I'd love to write something. And so I tried to take it and do something dramatic with it. So it's kind of a tone poem approach in a way,
Mm-hmm.
in that the melody starts off very nice and simple, nice alto sax melody, which then turns into a trumpet melody, which then gets more involved. And then the shout chorus goes off in all kinds of different directions. It's still very accessible. It does place some demands in the brass section for range and endurance, which is why I have it as a 4.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it sounds great, and I like it.
All right, let's check it out. Here's Los Vientos de Cambio. know, the first time I listened to it, I didn't connect that that was based on that tune, but now that I know that, it's so obvious.
They're just nice, smooth changes. It's you know,
Yeah,
fun to
well-
work with.
Do people usually use that if it's like on a festival set as like their middle tune? Or is
That would be where I would put it. It's only brand new this year, so I don't know how it's being used. I've not yet heard it as on a festival yet, but I think it certainly belongs there.
well,
I
I'll
think
make sure.
it'll-
I'll make sure if we do it, that I'll send you the recording of it.
Okay, please do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it really shows off the ensemble in a lot of variety of ways. The rhythm section, lead trumpet, obviously, alto soloist, trumpet soloist. You know, I try and include in every chart something that shows off every section.
Mm.
Even if it's just, you know, 4 bars here, 8 bars here, whatever it is, every section has something to go, ooh, that's my spot. So every player has a chance to buy in. You know, no, I'm not crazy about the chart, but man, at 37, I get 4 bars. You know, in the trombones, we get to do something there, or the saxes have a line here, or I really like that line over there, or something. So I try and get as much buy-in as possible.
It's so great. And for band directors who are newer to the, I mean, the term Latin is like saying the word English, right? There's so much in there. But,
it's a huge.
but doing a bossa nova chart like that, if you have maybe a band that can play that well, but the drummer or the bass player are newer to this style of music, you know, bossa nova is possibly the simplest version of Latin that you can do.
Yes, yeah.
Very playable, especially with new bass players.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all, yeah, that's the most rudimentary. And a lot of times I'll even have like a cross stick on all 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's your metronome, guys. Click, 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 click. And I give you 8 notes and a hi-hat. Bing, 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 bing. You're done. You're there. You know?
Yeah, and it gives you a little contemporary sound when you do it that way too.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, I got to know the story behind Once More Twice. What's this chart about? What's that mean?
Actually, it should be One More Twice.
I
perhaps-
apologize. One more twice.
My mistake. Or did I
No, it's
maybe-
probably me. It's probably me.
I typed it wrong to begin with. It was commissioned by the Florida Bandmasters several years ago. It was premiered actually at the Midwest Clinic in 2015 or 16, I forget which. It's a take on At the End of April in Paris, you know, da 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 da. Okay. One more one, you know, that thing. So instead of
it.
one more once, let's do it again. And also because the person who had commissioned it, we went through several revisions. You know, I like this, I like that, change this, change that. And he was very specific. So but one more once became one more twice.
That's great. All right, let's listen to the chart. Here it is. One more twice. Yeah, that's a great chart, Paul. I'm looking for some advice you might have to band directors who are listening, who are not writers but maybe want to get into writing.
Start writing.
Yeah.
Write anything. Write for your own band. If you're in a larger market where there are professional rehearsal bands, write something for them and take it in. The basic skills of, if you're a band director, I assume you have the basic skills of what to do. You know how things are supposed to sound. You know instrument ranges. You know what works, what doesn't work. And then beyond that, all the listening you can do. Listen to any big band you can get your ears on. Listen to that. Listen to any jazz you can listen to. Small group, solo piano.
Mm-hmm.
The more you can listen and get those sounds in your ears, and then kind of figure out on a keyboard or a piano or whatever your instrument is, what those sounds are, what those lines are. And then just start putting the pieces together and see what fits and what doesn't. Just
write and try to get it played. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same way with learning how to improvise. You just have to do it.
My friend Craig Skeffington talks about how he learned how to write good lines for instruments, because when he first started arranging for the first number of years, like the tenor 2 line would always be terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And the alto 2 line would be, and all that. And then like actually hearing it live with his students taught him how to write better lines, because he saw how hard it was to play certain lines that he didn't mean to make it hard.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You come at from a purely academic standpoint, but
Yep.
It's this, here's the notes. These are the notes in the voicing. Therefore it has to be this, and it has to be that. And so often the horizontal, the linear approach gets lost.
Mm-hmm.
That just kind of ends up as a result, a byproduct of the vertical. So what I often do, if I have a spot where I'm going to have like repeated notes or something that's going to be really weird in the saxes, it's like, no, let's just change that. What's the easiest way to get from that note to that note? Well, that works. Is it work in the voicing? Oh, it's okay. It's not great, but it's going to go by in a hurry. So that's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing, the most valuable class I think I took in all of college was a brass methods class, where I learned about trombone positions and how you can't go from 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5 back and forth without having somebody put a contract in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a natural, a thing that you have to understand. Okay, well, and I really have changed many trombone parts over the last years, just because this is the sound I would like initially, but that's not really going to be playable, and particularly not playable for a 12, 13-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's really going to be a challenge to ask them to do that. And so I've rewritten lines, revoiced chords, and when it comes down to it, I'll even reach out to my trombone player friends and say, okay, I'm trying to write this thing. Does that work for a high school kid? Is that too much? Or is that, and sometimes they'll say, oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes they go, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Or,
The nice thing that you do is in listening to all the charts you've played for us, is that if you listen to the bari sax part, it's not one of these mundane bari sax parts. The bari sax players are actually being treated as saxophone players and getting a chance to really blow.
Guess what my principal instrument is?
Bari sax, I know.
Yeah, I'm kind of partial, and it's kind of fun having that viewpoint of the band, just because I know the little things, the little extras I can add to a part that make it really that much more fun to play, or that much more special. Or I know what to avoid. I know what I really hate to see on my music stand. I hate to see a cello part. I hate to see a bass part unless it's really funky.
And how many times have you gone to a festival where you've got to decide between bands, and the thing that makes you decide between the bands is the fact that was a bari sax player.
Uh-huh.
And you heard the bari sax. You had 2 equal bands, but one band just had that bari sax player that made all the difference, especially in the sax solo sections.
Exactly. Well, the way a saxophone section really should be set up is the bari player should be the second strongest player in the section.
Yep.
And your lead alto is your first, your baritone player is your second. Because as a baritone player, I can either make the lead alto player's life so easy, or I can make it a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
By what I do or don't do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a really, really important chair that often as you had mentioned, it just kind of relegated to, oh, that's little Tommy. Well, we have to find a spot for him somewhere. We'll put him down there.
How many arrangements do we listen to where that isn't taken in that approach? They don't put the Barry player as a number 2 player. It's a neglected part in the arrangement.
Exactly.
Well, at some level of charts, if you write an important fourth trombone part, but it's at a grade level that maybe you don't have a strong fourth player, I love it when it doubles fourth trombone, because if you have a weaker player, that helps out.
Oh yeah, by all means, and that's a great sound. And one of my best friends in life is a bass trombone player. Actually, several of my best friends in life are bass trombone players because we've spent so many hours on a bandstand, playing those same parts and locking up. It's just one of those things that, we live to do.
All right. So the next chart we're going to listen to is 6 of 1. Paul, tell us a little bit about this chart.
This is something I came across. This is banging on the piano one day. It's like, this is kind of cool. And then as happens when I write a chart, sometimes it'll kind of grab me and go, well, we're going this way. And here's the rest of it. Now, please just follow along and write down what I tell you to write. Okay. And so that's kind of what happened with this one.
All right, let's check it out. 6 of 1. Such a great chart.
Thank you.
So we didn't talk much about it. So in looking at the title, 6 of 1, is it in 6/4?
It's actually in 3/4, but
That's
yeah,
what I
it's kind
guessed.
of built in 6. Yeah.
Boy, that chart led to a great discussion with the kids about Chick Corea and Pat Metheny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very much Pat Metheny influenced.
Yeah.
That's why there's a guitar solo. I'm not sure if it was in the audio there or not. The guitar solo and guitars featured in the melody and all that.
Yeah, that cool chart. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, all the counterpoint and all that kind of stuff going on. A lot of interplay. So it takes a fairly sophisticated ensemble to really to bring the music out of the notes, not just play the notes, really make music out of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's let me ask you this. I mean, Down here in Texas, 3/4 charts are very, very rare and almost never get played. Is that the case up in your part of the woods, or is that just a regional thing or a national thing, or what do you think?
No, I'd probably say that's pretty fair. 3/4 is definitely something I always think is easier than it is. And to me, when I'm trying to check all the boxes of, when I'm programming for me, it's 20 tunes for the year, for different functions. And
Yeah.
sometimes we'll do like Afro Blue, or we'll do My Favorite Things, or, tunes that are in 3/4. But yeah, you're right. I don't hear a lot of 3/4 tunes.
Yeah, I mean, down in Texas, jazz is not a big thing. Texas is known as a band state, but it's all about concert band, symphonic band, marching band, and oh yeah, there's a jazz band, but we don't really talk about it much. I don't know.
In Connecticut and New Jersey, since there's a lot of bands playing a lot of Metheny charts and Chick Corea charts, 3/4 is not avoided.
Yeah, good.
And it's the top bands usually make sure that they program that at a festival.
I would think so. I mean, that's kind of a next level kind of thing, as opposed to just playing another swing chart.
Yep, agreed.
Just make it. And so, yeah, it's a great groove. I like the tune. The chord progression's interesting. The harmonies, the counterpoint. I think it would be a really, really strong festival, particularly a competitive festival. Very, very strong chart.
All right. So a concept that could probably take us hours to really delve into, and we've talked about a lot about already, but, let's talk a little bit about what makes a great chart. When I'm going to talk about it from my standpoint briefly, and then I really want to hear what you gentlemen have to say. To me, when I'm looking for a chart, first of all, one of the things I'm doing more and more these days is trying to find tunes that my kids can learn the melodies by ear before we ever work on the chart, that I can teach them melodies by ear. That's something that I'm working on with my students. I think it's important that we're choosing charts with good chord changes, because so many times people choose charts, they get to the solo section, it's almost an afterthought. Or you can also, if you get to a chart where there's a solo section where the chord changes are crazy, right?
Exactly.
Do you know enough arranger friends to alter the chord changes in a way that your kids can blow on them? One final trick I did, I was doing a chart called The Chant by Mark Taylor. And I believe the bridge of that one had way harder changes than my kids were ready to play. It was a second band at the time. So who soloed on the bridge? The drummer, right? It was like a classic way to avoid that. But and then last thing I think about when I'm doing charts is sort of like, is it a style of chart that I want to have represented in the curriculum for the kids? Is it something that historically I can teach them history? Because so many kids don't learn history, and I think that through music we can teach history. So I always think about, okay, what can I teach through this chart beyond the actual chart?
Those are all excellent points.
Well, thank you.
Excellent points. I've never been a band director, and so I come at this as a musician, a performing musician. And if I happen to hit some educational points, yay me. But it's like I said earlier, it's never a priority. It's never a first consideration. Ideally, my stuff will kind of hit those targets as well. Primarily, I think I mentioned, kind of alluded to before, the chart's got to be solid music. It's got to be musically substantial. The chart has to go somewhere. It has to start somewhere. It has to have a contour, I guess is what I'm saying. It can't just be, here's our intro, and then here's our melody, and here's our solo, and here's our shout section, and we stopped. Okay, that was 5 minutes of my life for what? What did your kids learn from that? The kids didn't sound like they enjoyed playing it. Is that because that's where the band director's limitation comes into play of not knowing any better or not having the experience to, play other music? I think it's very, very important for music to have contours. The introduction has got to lead into the melody. The melody has got to go up and down. It's got to have, the bridge has got to be separate. The bridge has got to be something new, and then it's got to lead back into that last A section, which then has to lead into. I think the transitions are hugely important. And then the shout section. everybody said, "Oh, we just play the melody louder." No, no. I always look at the shout section as that's my chance as a writer. That's where I get to blow. That's my chance to show off.
Mhm.
I know I've kind of played nice, and I've had to work with the melody and stuff. But when it comes to shout section, that's where I get to kind of stretch and reharmonize, or throw in some quotes, or those kind of things.
Mhm.
So, and then it's got to end. It's got to have a real ending. It can't just stop.
Mhm.
So many charts, particularly modern charts, and they just kind of play and play, and then they stop. It's
I
like,
would
why'd
also
you stop?
I would also urge band directors to be super picky about the music that you choose for your kids. Like,
Oh yeah,
as you're searching, try to find something that's good enough for your kids. Don't just go, "Oh, I like that chart, let's do it." Like, you should say, like, I'll just say myself, I say no to way more charts than I ever actually put in front of my kids, because I'm just trying to find, I want every piece to be that filet mignon piece.
good for you. Good for you. Yeah, it's like I said, at festivals, you hear so much stuff go by, and you go, "Why did you spend your time on that one?"
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things I think your music does is fills a void. I don't know if you meant to do this or not, but because for me, I like to do original music, but I like so much to do standard music. I know we talked about this earlier, but
Yeah.
finding original music that you can also teach standard music is just really hard to do sometimes.
I think a part of it comes back to my film score training, and that I can look at the market and go, okay, that's successful. I like that. I like that. But let's put a twist on what already exists. Let's polish what's already out there. Because I'm not a great visionary composer. I'm really good at what I do,
Mhm.
but I don't see myself as I'm not breaking new ground by any stretch. And definitely the educational market is not the place to be breaking new ground. So part of it is kind of considered from a business standpoint, like the grade 2 swing charts. What do? Nestico.
Mhm.
What else is there to do?
Right.
I mean, obviously there's other things to do, but I mean that's such a huge chunk of the what that is.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's funny.
that's-
I know you say you don't think of yourself on the educational side of things as much, but just think of all the young kids over the years who see your name on there.
oh,
you know,
it's
sort of
very
like you
yeah,
think back to your youth and you think of those arrangers and writers that you listen to.
Oh, exactly. It's very humbling to sit back. We've been in business a little over 15 years now, and so we can pull a report and say, well, how many charts have we sold over that time frame? To think about, okay, well, conservatively 16 kids per
Mhm.
chart. That's that's a
Mhm.
big number,
Mhm.
and it's very, very humbling to realize that I've sitting in my little bedroom studio here. Have had music that has affected lives not only across America, but I mean Canada and all of Europe, Asia, Australia.
Mhm.
Through the glory of the internet and downloadable music, it's our stuff has literally gone everywhere, and it's just kind of mind blowing that I sometimes stop and think as I'm writing a chart, it's like, how's this going to play in in Norway? Or
Mhm.
is it going to be funky enough in France? We'll find out.
That's awesome. All right, let's. We got one more chart to play. It's called Un Poco Mas. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about this.
This is a grade 2 Latin chart. Again, very accessible, very straight 8. The focus was on kind of keeping the melody very simple, so that it didn't get too involved in the music and stuff. This is a very, as I mentioned before, Robert Skiles, Beto and the Fairlanes. This is very much in the mold of what he would do with his 4-horn salsa band. So it's accessible, melodic, simple chord changes. Oh, but before we get started on that,
Sure.
talking about the chord changes thing for solos. One thing that I've come to find out after getting some feedback from directors, we love the tune, but man, nobody can play those changes. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So there's no law that says you have to use the same changes for soloing that are in the melody,
Mhm.
or in the shout chorus for that matter. So I've one of my little formerly secret tricks, hence to be known to the world now.
Mm.
Go ahead and write for the melody. Write what you want to write. Write all the cool voicings, the stuff. Just what's going to sound great. But then when you come to the solo section, particularly in the Latin chart, where you might kind of go all over the place in the melody, the Latin chart 1-2-5-1, 2-5-1, or 1-5-1-5-1-5.
Mhm.
For solo section is totally appropriate, totally idiomatic,
Mhm.
and is stone cold. You can put on the score, G harmonic minor, teach your
Mhm.
kids G harmonic minor, and it works for the entire solo.
Yep.
That seems to be, to me, I would think represents a good value.
And that's educational.
Exactly.
But not educational music. We won't use that phrase. We've already
No,
talked about
the
that.
music should stand on its own as
Yeah.
music. This is a concert piece that you would sit down and listen to. If the kids learn something, even better.
On a side note to that, though, when some of our colleagues go to festivals, certain festivals in the middle states and lower New England, you need to write the changes you've changed to, so that the adjudicators looking at the scores isn't saying you've played the wrong changes. I can't
Mhm.
give you credit for what you're doing, because up here it becomes very literal that if you have X changes written on the chart and the judge is sitting there and they're not hearing those changes, the kids aren't going to get credit for what they're doing. So you need to take the time to write in what you've changed them to.
Wow.
Interesting. So
I've never heard of that.
These are festivals where you give the charts scores to the judges.
Yes.
Yeah.
NAJE, old NAJE competitions and stuff like that, where you gave the charts, you had to have the charts in 2 weeks in advance, you had to have all the measures numbered, and the judges have already thoroughly studied the charts.
Wow.
So you need to write in what changes you've changed to, so that the child gets the opportunity to really blow and get credit for what they're blowing.
Wow. Yeah, this time of year, a lot of our businesses sending out additional scores, and so it's always fun for us because somebody says, "I need 3 scores of this." Okay, well, that one's going to the contest. Okay, that's cool. We know we're getting played, but it's also, we know that those changes are going to be represented, to the judges.
And if you can make sure all the measures are numbered, we don't, as band directors, don't have to go through and number every single measure.
They are in the score. That's part of the process.
But some publishers don't, and you're there sitting there, okay, 46, 47.
It's 2 strokes on the keyboard. That's what you got to do.
That's right.
Exactly right. Yeah. Especially with Sibelius and Finale now.
It's so easy these days.
All right, let's check it out. Here's Un Poco Más. That's a really cool chart.
Thank you.
I really appreciate listening to all these charts of yours. What you've done for jazz education has been awesome.
I'm just trying to write good music.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you're
not,
doing it.
Not the humble thing, but I mean, I'm just that's the goal. I try to put really good product out and hope that people recognize it and want to buy it.
And
You did, and I got to tell you, I love how you voice your trombone section.
Well, thank you. I'll work on that.
Yeah, it makes a big difference between a lot of the commercial charts you listen to, where a trombone is okay, they got a part, but yours are nice and solid, clear voicings, done real well.
Well, I was at a clinic one time, and I learned a really important thing from one of the other clinicians about trombone voicing, particularly in section voicing, just because of the slide and trying to find pitch. In terms of, because it's easy to write a lot of clusters and half steps and stuff with trombones and stuff. He said, no, don't. That's really hard for them to play.
Mhm.
And he'll actually go so far as to reseat the players so that the guys with the half steps aren't sitting next to each other. So they can actually hear their part more clearly, and therefore the whole pitch of everything is better.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I never thought about that before. I just figured, B natural is there, C is here. How hard is that?
Sure.
Well, it's a problem.
That's great.
Yeah, well, thank you, Paul. This has been a lot of fun. Anything you
It
want to
has
give?
been a lot of fun.
Anything you want to give as a message to band directors, or I know you're not a band director yourself, but anything as we wrap up.
Find the one point that I didn't make earlier that just came to me in terms of selecting a good chart. Find something that is going to challenge the kids. A lot of people will say, "Oh, they can't play this part," or this is too hard over here, or something. I like it, except for those. The kid should have something to practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think every section, every kid should have something they have to go, I have to work on that to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
If they can play it right away, then you're missing the point, I think. They're not going to improve. So yeah. I think that there needs to be that level of, I dare you to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge you to do this. Not that I'm trying to push it. I'm just trying to write music, but from the band director, I think, to say, okay, this is good here. But, I think this will be a little something fun for the sax section. Let's see if they can pull that off or not.
Yep. That's
and
great.
I guess the other thing that would come to mind is the concept of listening across the ensemble. How important it is to play not simultaneously, but to play together. Mm-hmm. Those are two very different things. Where even within, say, a saxophone section, where everybody's listening, the lead alto player is playing lead, the second alto player is playing a level down, but the ear is glued to the lead alto player. So the phrasing is exact. Mm-hmm. And the baritone player is listening exactly to what the lead alto player is doing, and the bass trombone player. Lead alto player is listening exactly to what the trumpet player is doing. Mm-hmm. And that thing. So many ensembles could be improved just by having the horn section listen to having the rhythm section listen to each other. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, the horns listening to the rhythm section and vice versa.
Yeah. The way I try to teach my band every year is the whole section always has to lead. If they can listen to one thing, listen to the lead player, period. And then the secondary one would be, the other people like your instrument, but then lead alto, lead trombone, listening back to lead trumpet listening to rhythm section, specifically drums. I think that hierarchy works at the educational level.
Oh, it works. That's the way it works at the professional level. Yeah. And that's the way a big band works. The other dynamic you have to keep in mind is that the guys in the back row really can't hear what's happening on the front row. Mm-hmm. So if lead alto player is the hotshot kid who figures everybody's just going to follow him, it ain't going to happen because they have no idea what he's going to do.
The sound goes forward.
Exactly. So they have to learn to listen to the guys behind them, whether their egos can handle it or not. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
There are those hot shots in the front row that figured it. Yeah.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us today. This has been awesome.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.